Hello everybody. Welcome to our 5 days of Christmas cards. We are on day 4. My name's Birdie with Redbird Designs. If you don't know me, if you're able to watch, say hi. Just gonna make sure everything's working. Okay, so audio sounds okay. So if you didn't know, we are doing 5 days of Christmas card painting this week, where I go live every day at noon and paint a new Christmas card. Giving a hand-painted Christmas card this year would be such a blessing to somebody, and I hope you are able to paint along with me. These designs that we're doing could easily be painted on wood to create a cute shelf sitter, or you could paint them on an ornament blank, a little mini canvas, and attach a ribbon to it to create a fun ornament. So a lot of different ways to do these paintings if you didn't want to do Christmas cards but still wanted to paint along. So let's see, Monday we did the snowman. So if you want to go back and watch that, catch that on the replay, it is recorded and available on our Facebook page. Just scroll down a little bit and you'll find that. Tuesday we did the Oh Christmas tree painting. Again, available for replay on our Facebook page. Yesterday we did the truck and tree, and it's available for replay. And then today we're going to do the joy, and we're going to use watercolors or acrylics as watercolors. So I'll show you how to do that in this fun vintage type bell painting. And then tomorrow, our last day, we will do the cute little Santa gnome. So if you'd like to paint along with us, I'd be happy to share the supply lists with you and the tracers if you want those. Just message me and I will shoot them to you. So let's get started with the joy painting. I'm using cardstock to paint all of my images or paintings on. My cardstock is 4.5 by 6. That's what I've cut mine down to, and the reason I use that size is because the note cards that I have, I just picked these craft paper note cards up. They're blank, and these are 5 by 6.5. And so when I am ready to adhere this, I get this nice border along the edge, and so that's why I've cut that to that size. If you have a different size note card, cut it to whatever size that you're going to use there. The note cards that I picked up are from Michaels, but I know you could get them at any of the craft stores and on Amazon. I picked up the Recollections brand from Michaels, and it came with the blank cards and envelopes. And again, mine are 5.5 by 6, or 5 by 6.5. Really, any size will work for you, and you can adjust the. If you get the tracers, you can, shrink or enlarge the tracers to whatever size that you have. Okay, so let's get started here. I've got my tracer out. So I've got my tracer, I've got my cardstock. The brushes that I'm going to use today are going to be just a medium round and my liner brush, so just 2 brushes. I'm going to use 3 colors, a yellow, the Christmas green, and my primary red. And then I'm going to use a Sharpie to create the outline that we see here. And you could use a craft pen, a paint pen, just as long as it's a thin one. Let's see, where's my craft? So something like this. This is the Hobby Lobby's brand Master Touch. It's a graphite pen, but it's waterproof and permanent. So water resistant, archival quality. So really anything will work for creating this line work. You just want to make sure that it's water resistant or waterproof. So a Sharpie, a thin Sharpie, ultra fine point Sharpie will work. It's a permanent marker. Because, and the reason we want to make sure that it's waterproof is because we are using acrylics today as a watercolor. So we're going to be adding a lot of water and making it run a little bit to give us this fun vintage look where it's running outside of the line a little bit, and we've got some the paint is going to flow. And if we don't use waterproof, it's going to reactivate that marker and cause it to bleed and not have those sharp lines. So that's key, is that it's waterproof. Okay. So I will move that aside, and I am going to take my tracer and just line it up with my card, and then we'll tape it down. And then I'm going to take my graphite paper or carbon paper and create or transfer that image onto my card. When you're working with graphite paper, there's two sides to graphite paper. There's the dull side and then the shiny side. You always want to have that shiny side down. So we'll slide that between my cardstock that I'm going to paint on and my image here. And then I'll just take a pencil and quickly trace over my image. Okay. There we go. Okay, so because we're creating this watercolored look with the the color running outside of the lines, and it's just got this really abstract feel to it. Oh, excuse me. Let me make sure it's in picture for you. We want to put the outline down first. So a little bit backwards from what we do when we're creating acrylic painting, where we paint everything and then we come back with our outlining and our highlights. We're going to put our outline in first, so we're almost creating a little coloring book. So I'm going to grab my permanent marker here, or my pen, and I'm going to just quickly outline my bells. So if you're painting along with us, whether it's while we're painting or while I'm live, or you're catching it on the replay, let me know if you're painting along. And if you create a couple of the cards, I'd love to see your work. I'd love to see your progress. So show me a picture in the comments, or post a picture on our Facebook page would be awesome. Okay. Don't forget the detail in the bells. And you could switch up the details. You could add whatever sort of pattern you want in your bells. Okay. So for this one, I've got just a series of small little circles on the bands here. I've got this coil pattern here, and then I just did this, it's not a chevron, but back and forth diagonal there. But you could do stripes, you could do bigger polka dots. Okay, and then I put the little dots inside of these diagonals here. So you could do a pattern, like a plaid pattern or a checkerboard pattern. Just have fun with those patterns. You do not have to copy mine if you wanted to do something else. And then I'm also going to outline my joy right now. So to give it more of a calligraphy or a lettered look, I am thickening up the areas of the letter that would be considered the downstroke. So if you're thinking about when you're creating those letters, a downstroke is when you start at the top and work your way down. So this is a downstroke, and then I would come around this loop here and come back up. That's an upstroke. Our downstrokes are always thicker than the upstrokes. So I'm coming up, I'm going to leave this area thin, and then when I get to the top of the O, I create a downstroke here. So I'm going to thicken this area where I'd bring my pen back down. So I've got a thick area there, and then I'm coming back around the O, I'm coming up an upstroke, I'm going to leave it thin, and then there's just a little bit of a downstroke on this loop here, so I'm going to thicken that up. Okay, and then on the Y, I have the downstroke coming around this loop here. So I'll thicken the area up here. And then I have an upstroke, and then I go down here. So I'm going to thicken that long stroke here. Okay, and then as I come around the loop on the Y, it's an upstroke and then a down around this little loop. So I'm going to thicken it there, and then I'm going to come around and do a downstroke and just give it like a little teardrop ending right there. So that's an easy way to create really pretty calligraphy type lettering, is just create that in a single line stroke. So we just write it out like we're going to, and then come back and think about those downstrokes and upstrokes and thicken them on the down. Hi Erin, painting along, awesome. Okay, So now that we've got our outlines in, we want to make sure to erase any of the graphite that we can see before we start painting. Because once we put that paint on top of that graphite, it will not come off. So I've got a little bit of graphite where when I was tracing I kind of went a little bit haywire, so I'm just going to take my eraser and erase the entire image, around the entire image, just to ensure that all of that graphite is off my card. Oh, how awesome, Erin. That is great. I'm so glad that you are able to do that and give yourself some creative therapy all week. Yahoo. Okay. So I got all the graphite off there. So another tip, I should have mentioned it while I was doing the tracing. When you're using that graphite paper, use a really light hand and try and not press so hard, because the harder you press, the more graphite will get deposited, and it can get kind of hard to erase. Okay, we are ready for some watercolor. So let's start with, let me find my, it doesn't matter what color we start with. Oh, I forgot my little stars. We want to get those in. So the stars are just a long line in the horizontal, kind of a shorter one, long vertical, short horizontal, and then we just do a couple short ones crisscross from that. So we're just going to put a couple stars out here. And you can make them all different sizes. Some can be a little bit bigger and some can be smaller. Okay, and then I'll put a couple over here. Do as many or as few stars that you want. So I tried to think about my colors too. So I've got 3 stars for each color, I think. Let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. I should have 9. I think I need one more. We'll put one up here. So let me show you what those stars look like a little close up. So the vertical one coming down is my longest one, and then the other ones are just a little bit shorter. Okay, let's start with red. And let me get a clean palette out for this, because my palette is a mess. Okay, since this card is really tiny, we do not need a lot of paint. But if I were doing a bigger painting and I wanted to use acrylics as a watercolor, I would get more of a plate out so that my water wouldn't run all over. But I'm using such a small amount for this painting. Using this flat palette is going to be okay this time. So what we're going to do is we're just going to add water to our acrylic. So I dipped my brush in some water, clean water, and I'm just adding and mixing that in to create a more fluid acrylic. The more water you add to it, the more transparent it will be, and I'll show you that here. So I'm going to just use the, well, let me add just a little bit more water off to the side here. So I've got quite a bit of water in this. You want it to be fluid, but you also don't want it to drip off your brush. Okay, and then I'm going to pick up that and start with the bottom of this bell here. So I'm going to just put some paint down in there. And it ran and kind of pushed outside of the lines, which is what I want. I want it to be more abstract. And that turned out pretty good. I was trying to show you an area where if you had too much water, it would look less like red. It would look more pinky. So let me try over here and try and mess up so you can see what that looks like. So you can see here I've added quite a bit of water to that area, and you can tell the difference. This is very light, it has less pigment, and this is a lot more red, it's dark. And so depending on how much water you have will determine what your watercolor is going to look like and how dark that pigment is going to be. So if you want it more dark like this, then you just want to add more paint to your mix. So I got a little bit more paint, and I'm just going to lay some more color on that. To you, so you can see a little bit closer how that color runs a little bit outside of the lines, which is exactly what I want it to do. I want it to have that abstract kind of vintage watercolor flow. Okay. All right, so another thing about watercolors is you can pick up paint too. So if it got too dark, let's say I didn't want this to be quite as dark, it's looking less like watercolor and more like maybe an acrylic paint, I can clean my brush off, dry it out on my rag, and then just brush over that, and it's going to pick up that paint for me. So I was able to pick up a lot of that wet paint, and it lightened it up as well. So you can go either way with it. And you can also use a clean napkin and dab it, and that will pick up any excess paint that you have if you want to lighten it up. Okay. So, and then also make sure that maybe you don't load your brush up too much with water. Because that can cause maybe the paint to expand out farther than what you want it to. So be careful about that as well. Okay, so let's see, let's grab some of these stars with the red. And I'm just going to do a downward and pretty much do the same thing I did with my pen, but with the brush. You could definitely use a liner brush for this if you wanted it to keep the shape of the star. With this bigger brush, I'm finding that it just kind of bleeds into a little bit of a blob, but that's okay. That's kind of how I want it to look anyways. I still see some of my points, but I'd lose a lot of that shape with the color. So if you want to hold on to those star shapes a little bit more, use a liner brush for placing that down. In this one, in my first one, I really just dabbed my color on there and made it look even more just like a shape that those stars were sitting in. Okay, let's move on to green. So I dip my brush in the water, and I kind of give it a gentle tap so I don't get too much water. The brush does hold a lot of water, and it's typically just enough for what you're going to need in this painting here to create that watercolor. Okay. So we've got this middle piece up here, green. So we'll fill that in. Just love this vintage look of these watercolors and these bells. Hi Sandra, thanks for joining. She says, I think I'll use watercolors on one. Yes, if you have watercolors a try, give those a try. Absolutely. Hi Erin, hi Michelle, thanks for watching. Okay, so we've got just this little bit under here in green. And then let's do this band in green. And if your bells are not dry, so the red here is not completely dry, you might see some really pretty blooming happening. And what that is that's when your colors mix and it will take this green and it blooms it out into the red, which is the beauty of watercolors. So if that happens, don't stress about it. Once it dries, it's going to look amazing. So let me show you what I mean in my original. So here I have the green bottom of the bell, and when I did the yellow first, and then I came back in with this green, and because the yellow was still wet, it sucked in some of this green and created this blooming effect, is what it's called. And it just looks so cool, I think. So if that happens to you, just let it be, let it dry, and I assure you it's going to look amazing. So here we have some happening actually on this one, which I think looks really cool, where the green is starting to bloom into that red. And I can even force it a little bit more by moving my water around and moving my card around. So if you really want some really nice blooming and some heavy mixing, have that water sitting there and then just move your card around and it will push those colors around. Okay, where do I else have green? Let's put some green on the bottom of this bell here. And over here. Okay, moving on to yellow. All right. And if your paint has dried and you want to see some of that blooming, but it's dried, maybe you had to walk away and you come back to finish it, you can always just reactivate those colors, just going over it with, you know, that same green with a little bit of water, and then coming in with, you know, the yellow or the red or whatever it is you want, and forcing that bloom to happen, or that mix of colors, which is super fun. Okay, and then let's do, I'm just going to do the outline of my crisscross here, or my diagonals. I'm not going to color it in. So I've got yellow just right on the lines there, and then let's do a couple stars in yellow. Okay, and then I forgot to do green, so let's go back and get a little bit of this green for some of my stars. So here's an area where I've deposited too much water. It's kind of just sitting there, and it's going to take forever to dry. So to help it along, I'm just going to use my brush that I've squeezed out all the water, so it's pretty dry. I'm just going to tap it on that, and it's going to soak up that water. So let me show you. There was a big pool of green right there, and I wanted it to be able to be dry a little bit faster, so I just soaked that back up. Okay. All right, so a couple last steps here, and this one's done. Super easy, super fun, you guys, using these watercolors and just letting the paint flow and have some fun with being loose and giving it more of an abstract feel. So the last step that I want to do is I want to darken some areas just to create a shadow, so it looks like the bells aren't just a flat color. So I've got a little bit of some dark red here, dark green here, and then I've added some darker yellow on this side, so a little bit more pigment. And so I'm not going to change my colors, I'm just going to lay down some more pigment. So I'm just layering some more color on that. So let's go back to this red, and I'm going to lay down another layer of red, which is going to just automatically darken that for me. So I'm going to do it on this side, creating a brush stroke here. I also want to do it down here where the bell flares out. I'll put just a little bit down here on the bottom of the ball there, and then that's it for the red. So let's go to the green next. I'm going to grab a little bit more of that green pigment into our water, the green paint, making it just a little bit darker. And we're going to do the same thing. We want to just create a brush stroke on one side of the bell to darken it up, to make it look like it's rounded. Do it down at the bottom of the flange here. I'm going to just do a quick little streak in my bands there, and then also on this bell here I'm going to add a dark streak on the one side. Alright, let's go grab a little bit of that yellow. Yellow's a little bit harder because it came in fairly well for me on my watercolor, but we'll see if we can just get it a little bit darker right here. It's going to be harder to see. Once it dries, we'll start to see that it's darker here and lighter there. Okay. And I think I'm going to add a little red in this crossed here. And then we'll color these little dots in with red. And there we go. One last thing that I did with this is I splattered it. So let me bring this up closer so you can see it. You can see these really fun water splatters, which adds just to that watercolored feel of this painting. Okay, so to do that, I'm going to wash my brush out. We'll start with red. We're going to get some wet paint on our brush, not too much. And it's always good to practice on something else before you start. So I'm going to just grab a scratch sheet of paper and do a quick little test run. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to tap it on my finger. It's loaded up with water and the watered down paint. And so just a quick little tap, and then I can see that it's starting to create those fun splatters. But always do a test run, because if you get too much water in your brush, you could end up with one big blob. So do a test run and then do it on your card. Okay, so we got the red in there. Let's do the green. And I'll do a quick little test here, make sure my water isn't too much. Looks good. And then we'll come out here and do a couple splatters. Okay, and then last we will grab some of the yellow and do a little bit of that. Quick little test, we're good. And with the splatters, this is going to also splatter on your bells, which would then cause maybe some blooming to happen as well, if any of your bells are wet. Okay, that's it, you guys. That is our Joy painting tutorial today. So let me bring that closer. So right now my splatters look really dark and heavy because they're wet, but once they dry, they're going to look more like a watercolor splatter. So you can see how some of them splattered on my bell and kind of mixed with this here, and it's creating some fun color blooming there. So there we go. What do you guys think? So here's the original, and here's this one. So if you've painted along with us, I'd love to see your paintings. Post them in the comments or throw them on my Facebook page. I'd love to see your progress. If you want to paint along with us, all of the videos are available on our Facebook page, available for replay indefinitely. So you can go back and catch those anytime that you want. If you would like a supply list and the tracers, I'd be happy to share those with you. Just message me and I will send those to you. Linda looks amazing. Thanks, Linda. Sandra, love it. Thanks. I can't wait to see yours. I can't wait to especially see the ones with the watercolors. Oh, one last thing. I did do this in a landscape mode and with some different colors. So this can be done in all your colors. You could switch this up to blues and grays. You could do, you know, more greens, more muted greens. You could do all sorts of colors. So I played around with some colors and did this pink and teal color, which I absolutely love as well. So many ways that you can make this card. And again, I just feel like sending somebody a hand-painted card this Christmas is such a blessing. And again, every time you do one of these, they're going to be a little bit different. Every time I paint the same painting, it always has a little bit of a different feel. So essentially you're sending somebody a hand-painted card, one of one. You know, they're not a copy, they're original and unique, every single one of them. So All right, guys, so I will let you go. Tomorrow will be the last day of our 5-day Christmas paintings. We are going to do the Christmas gnome or the Santa gnome tomorrow. So I look forward to seeing you guys tomorrow at noon. And yeah, thanks for watching. Thanks for joining me today, and we will talk to you tomorrow. Bye.